Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing as well as analysing tech news, which as usual has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. Hopefully you are having an amazing day. We have lots of news to get through in this video. I want to start things out though with the Ryzen 4000 series, which will naturally be powered by AMD's Zen 3 processors, and is scheduled to launch at some point this year. There is lots of conflicting information as to the exact release date. One theory is that they're going to launch around September-October time. However, AMD seems to have implied it's going to be later in the year, so currently we'll just say some point in 2020 unless there's a delay because of cough, cough, cough. Anyway, the real thing that we want to discuss here is the fact that it will also mark the end of the AM4 platform where we shift to AM5. But naturally, AMD did make the pledge back in 2017 that it wants to ensure that you have as much forwards and backwards compatibility as possible. For example, if you bought a 1700X back in the opening days of the Ryzen 1000 series launch, no problem, you could plonk in a 2700X when, of course, Zen Plus launched, and so on and so on. There are, however, some feature issues. For example, if you're running a Zen 2 processor, say like a 3700X, in a B450 motherboard, you are lacking PCIe 3 support, which is not a massive problem in terms of graphics right now, but it does limit your storage options. Obviously, a PCIe 3 drive is not as fast as PCIe 4, and who knows how PCIe 4 will become useful in the next couple of years, given, well, just how graphics technology is going to be evolving, and most likely we're going to be needing GPUs to be sending a lot more data to and from main system memory, and potentially even the SSD, given how the next generation consoles are architected. But anyway, in an official Reddit thread, XMG representatives claimed that we will be able to use a Ryzen 4000 series processor in a B450 motherboard. But of course it does require a BIOS update. Honestly, this is not a huge piece of news in that AMD pretty much confirmed it, and naturally if you had an X470 motherboard then you can also say much the same. But one question I have is that they've not gone as far as to say the 300 series boards. Now, one thing that we do know about AMD's motherboards over the last couple of generations is with the 300 series, there was a lot of, I wouldn't say hesitation, but there was not the enthusiasm. Let's use the word enthusiasm from motherboard manufacturers as what there is now. Like, speaking to a couple of AIB partners, people were like, yeah, okay, the boards, you know, we'll make them, of course, because AMD does have its fans, but ultimately no one really expected AMD to have the runaway success it has had with the Ryzen series, especially the Zen 2 processors. So some motherboards quite simply just didn't have particularly great phases, and there was a lot of issues with the boards and BIOSes for the first generation, which was also quite a bit to do with AMD, to be honest with you, weren't amazing. So I do wonder what is going to happen with the 300 series boards. I imagine that we will have forwards and backwards compatibility, with the obvious caveat of you may have limitations on storage options, and also some of the older boards were very finicky even with BIOS updates for faster memory, so we'll just have to wait and see. So once again, this is not a particularly huge piece of news. It's pretty much confirmation of what AMD had said in the past, but it does at least tell us that the plans have not changed, which is always nice to see. And quite frankly, if you had bought yourself a 400 series board, for example, so you had purchased a 2700X, you must be pretty damn happy with yourself. And moseying on to Sony land, and by golly, lots of stuff has happened in consoles. We'll talk on something exclusive to Sony, and then also something that may impact Microsoft as well. The first of which is Amazon France had a ridiculous number of titles that were stated that it was coming out on PC as well. They were saying, of course, it was unavailable at the moment, but the listing was there. And so games like Last of Us 2 and Days Gone were listed for the PC, which of course was making people freak out just a smidgen. Like, okay, Horizon Zero Dawn coming to PC makes an awful lot of sense. God of War is actually rumoured to be coming to PC, but once again, it's kind of old now. It makes sense for Sony to make that cash money and actually get people invested in the franchise, at least in my opinion, because obviously it means that someone may say, you know what, the PlayStation 5 is available, I really enjoyed God of War, I really enjoyed Horizon Zero Dawn, I might as well just pick up a PlayStation 5 and play the games right now. But when you're listing games like Last of Us 2, which have not even seen the release yet on the PS4, that is going to cause some eyebrows to raise. Well, Sony have actually issued a statement and said that, yeah, this was an error in listing. Don't worry, these games are not coming out on the PC anytime soon, so don't worry yourselves. And quite frankly, I find it kind of amusing how quickly this statement was issued. Personally, I think that Sony will release a lot of games for PC. I just think that you're going to have to wait a while. And of course, you do also have PlayStation Now as well, where some games are available anyway. And now on to the big story today, in that Sony are planning to limit the number of PlayStation 5 it produces for the first year. And the reason behind all of this is allegedly because of the prices of components, at least according to Bloomberg.com, who have an exclusive. I'll of course link it in the video description. The Tokyo-based tech giant is limiting its initial production run in part because it expects the PS5's ambitious specs to weigh in demand by leading to a higher price at launch. And furthermore, they have stated that the mass production is not the problem here. They can hit production capacity, but Sony themselves have said that they wish to only assemble between 5 to 6 million, that's what they've told assembly partners, in the fiscal year ending March 2021. To put this into some context, PlayStation 4 in November 2013, the first 2 quarters sold around 7.5 million. So depending on what the assembly partners end up producing, let's say 5 million, you're looking at around 2 to 2.5 million fewer systems. And according to games developers who have been speaking to Bloomberg, they anticipate the price to be between $500 to $549 US, and from investigations from Bloomberg, Matthew Ketterman, he also believes that the component costs will also be much higher than what Sony had originally intended, and this will mean the console is going to have to be more expensive for Sony to break even. And furthermore, there may be scarcity of certain components as well. Now, let's put some things into context, because that's very important. From what I understand, the PlayStation 5 hardware internally, that is, being tested by Sony, as well as the development kits, is fantastic. It's doing really well. Developers are really happy with it. It's extremely easy to develop for. By the way, much the same could be said for the Xbox, just for your FYI. But Sony have not obviously entered mass production yet, and they don't want to show off the console until mass production systems are being produced, because they don't want to show off a hand-assembled system. I've explained this previously, and also Sony are not having overheating problems, but with all of that said, it does mean that Sony have also not shown off any gameplay either. Really, we've seen very little about the console other than controllers and stuff, which, to be honest with you, had kind of leaked anyway at that point. And there'd been so many patents which pretty much explained what the controllers were capable of. Sony didn't really have any choice but to show off the controller. Now, for the game demos, one of the reasons I've been told that Sony don't want to show off demos is because demos can actually take quite a long time for developers to craft. It does, of course, depend upon the game, but currently all of Sony's teams, much like Microsoft's teams, are working like absolute crazy people. They are putting every single bit of effort they can into it, and this is particularly because many studios are obviously new to working from home, especially in essentially the closing months of a game's launch. So because of all of this, it's really kind of straining and stressing everyone out, and that's for Sony and Microsoft. So for a team, a studio, to then be told, hey, you know what, you also need to craft like a 10-20 minute demo, which looks amazing, by the way, and we can provide that to the press, ain't gonna happen. It's just way too much effort. It would require the environmental artists, the programmers, and everyone else to divert significant resources to do this. So because of all of that, Sony are kind of just like, well, the only thing we can really do is just work like crazy and show off fairly complete code. They can't do anything else at this point, which kind of makes sense, and it also does largely fit with what Sony have done in the past with console launches, and well, there have been a couple of times that Sony have been a bit too boisterous with marketing, so I think it's learnt quite a few lessons from that. And Microsoft, very similar. We've not really seen anything from Microsoft. We've seen like Gears, which is basically a port from a PC with slightly tweaked settings. Obviously it looks really impressive, but it's not anything you would buy an Xbox Series X for. It's just Gears, but slightly nicer looking. We've seen Hellblade, but nothing really there, and not really that much stuff for Halo Infinite. Not anything you could call gameplay, certainly. And I think all of this is much the same symptoms, because obviously all of the studios are just working so hard right now. Mass production is said to be hitting in June, which that's what Bloomberg is stating, and that's kind of the time frame I was told. I was told possibly July, but June, July, basically you can say that it makes sense anyway, given how long consoles take to ramp up production. And one benefit of production of consoles compared to, let's say, an iPhone is you don't need like a clean room environment. Some pieces of tech are a lot trickier to produce. Obviously there are multiple components which go into production of a console. Obviously you've got like the motherboard and all of this other stuff which goes into it, but the final assembly is not too difficult. It's almost kind of like Lego. And so in that regard, you don't need such a stringent environment compared to, let's say, an iPhone. So that does help some. And once again, it doesn't seem like the actual manufacturing capability or capacity is the problem. It seems like it's the component costs. And to this end, Sony are allegedly considering reducing the price of the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Pro, obviously for the Christmas period. So if, for example, the PlayStation 5 is in worst case scenario $550, they may sell the PS4 Pro, and I'm just pulling a figure out, for like $250, $300 US. In fact, Microsoft, if you look at what they're doing, the Xbox Series X, they've now discounted it to just $299 in the UK, and I think it's the same in the States as well. So obviously that's a pretty steep, significant discount. And a couple of benefits Microsoft have. One, Microsoft have obviously made that pledge for you being able to buy an Xbox One game, and then an Xbox One version of a game, and then that obviously will then be upgraded, updated, whatever you want to call it, for the Xbox Series X. That's definitely a major positive for Microsoft. Also, because they've made the pledge where games will be released on both the current generation and next generation of Xboxes, that will definitely help soften the blow as well. So if you've bought, let's say, an Xbox One S last year, you can say, well, okay, you know what, the console is a bit too expensive for me at the moment, or I missed the pre-orders. Okay, fine, I'll wait until like July or whatever next year, and meanwhile, at least I can play Halo Infinite. Yes, it won't look as shiny, yes, it won't play as well, but at least I can enjoy Halo Infinite in the meanwhile, right? And then obviously I get to kind of experience it again on my new console, and then, you know, really enjoy the ray trace graphics and blah blah blah. And I'm wondering what the price of the Xbox is going to be as well, because I don't think the production costs for Microsoft are going to be that much cheaper than Sony. I mean, let's be honest, yes, you could say that the SSD is cheap on the Xbox, but then the APU is most likely more expensive to produce. And, you know, you've kind of got the swings and roundabouts. Unfortunately, We don't know enough about both systems to make a great cost breakdown right now. I imagine that the cooling solution for the Xbox is not going to be that much cheaper, if any cheaper than the PlayStation 5. But then again, Microsoft does have more disposable income, so technically it may decide to just, well, basically swallow more of the cost. Another possibility is Microsoft may decide to give Game Pass away for a year. So you would have like a free year of Game Pass with your Xbox, but it's still going to cost you an awful lot of money. I'm trying to find out more from my own sources if they've heard anything similar to this Bloomberg report. I've already reached out to several of them. One of them has gotten back to me and did imply that this report could at least have some accuracy, but they're not really providing me any specifics. So until I can learn more, I'm not really comfortable to say that I'm either going to damn the report or I'm going to confirm the report. I'll keep digging by myself. But yeah, this is going to be really interesting because we could be in this position where the next generation consoles are going to be an unfortunately higher price than what we'd anticipated. There are also a lot of questions then what this means for Microsoft, given allegedly they have Lockhart, or Xbox Series S, I guess it could be called, which is obviously allegedly going to be a cheaper version of the Xbox Series X. The primary difference, if the rumoured specifications anyway are accurate, is that the Series S, or Lockhart, has significantly less GPU power, and will probably be aimed at people who are yet to upgrade to a 4K screen or not necessarily that concerned about having the shiniest graphics, but do want the benefits of the next generation. So for example, it will still have a fast SSD drive, it will still have a Zen 2 processor, and so on and so on. So really, the primary limitation, at least if all of these rumours are accurate, is going to be the resolution. Then again, I don't think the technical challenge is going to be a problem. In other words, creating games for the Xbox Series S and the Series X, I think games can scale pretty well, especially once again, given that the two systems are almost identical. It's just really the GPU which is going to be different between the two, and quite frankly, you can easily scale games which are GPU bound simply by doing things like lowering the internal rendered resolution, maybe the frame rate, but I'm guessing it's going to primarily be the resolution. The question is though, how the hell are they going to market that? But then again, I guess if it's like, well, the Xbox Series X is like, let's say $500 and this comes in at like $300, that could be one way to do it. Yeah, this next generation of consoles is going to be a very interesting one, I suspect. I'm still extremely excited. If you're a PC gamer, then maybe your perspective changed though, because previously a lot of PC gamers I know were considering picking up a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X given the prices of GPUs at the moment, and basically just kind of waiting and saying, well, I'll set things out for 6 months, 12 months and then kind of revisit. But obviously, if the price of a system is like $500, $550 US, and that's not including games, then perhaps picking up an RTX 30 series or the next generation RDNA cards may be the better option if you're a PC gamer. It's going to be really interesting. As for console people, yeah. I'm going to be really interested to see what the marketing message is going to be here, especially for Sony, who have essentially bifurcated their console lineup. Obviously with the PlayStation 5, the good news is you do have backwards compatibility, but they are most likely not going to be cross-releasing games. So you won't have a game which is originally intended for the PlayStation 5, but also coming out on the PS4. And it's kind of difficult to get someone excited, even with a price cut, I suspect, for the PS4 now. Most people who wanted a PS4 would have picked one up by now, and I think for those who are aiming for the PS5, it's going to be really difficult for them just to kind of say, well, you know what, I'm going to settle on the PS4 or the PS4 Pro, which really means, of course, they're targeting parents. So it's going to be very interesting for me over the next couple of years. But with all of that said, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. The normal stuff if you did. Like, share, comment and subscribe. And I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.